Is encouraging teachers to register for training that encourages something called ethnomathematics. Ethnomathematics, not making that up. That training teaches that white supremacy manifests itself in the focus on finding the right answer to math problems. Algebra is racist. French Revolution, anyone? Libby Emmons is a senior editor at the Post Millennial. She joins us today. Libby, this is one of those stories. It's hard to believe it's real. There are so many of those. How could math be racist since it's purely objective?
Well, that's a really good question. But to answer that question, you also have to understand that objectivity is now considered racist. So, you know, that's part of the problem. Anything where you get to have right and wrong answers, well, you know, that's racist. But there are several additional problems with this entire program. The first one is that this is the idea that teachers are perpetuating racism in the classroom because they are racist, they are blind to their own biases, and they don't have any control over whether or not they bring that racism with them. The other one is, as you said, this idea that math is a white discipline, which even a modicum of research would tell you is monumentally absurd. And the third is this concept of this soft bigotry of lowered expectations that tells people that students of color can't achieve to the given standard, and so those standards need to be changed. But the problem, of course, is that kids aren't stupid, and they know when they're being pandered to. They know when they're being patted on the head and told that they're doing a good job when they know themselves that they're not measuring up. We also know that kids thrive when they are held to account. Any parent can tell you this. When a child is expected to live up to a certain measure of responsibility, kids are able to thrive with that. They need that. They need to be able to take care of themselves and to live up to standards. Any kid knows this. And so when we treat them like they're idiots, that they need to have interpretive dance lessons in order to learn math, they see right through that. They obviously do. So I don't know who's being fooled here. We're bankrupting our nation. We're bankrupting these kids' lives. The schools are closed. We're killing them that way. And we're also messing so much with the language. We're accepting the terms of leftist indoctrination. We're accepting these terms, anti-racism. There's no reason for us to do this. They're not real. They're not based in reality. And we're also...
No, you're right. And we're pretending that this is on the level when it's not.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion about the socialism of Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon. That's not going to be the entire show. We do have to talk about it for a little bit because it is kind of insane that Glenn Greenwald did say that. Before I even introduce my guest, I do want to say this. I was in Brazil when the Lula story broke, when he was still locked up in Curitiba, and we had like played there a few nights before. And then I remember we had got back to where we were staying in Florianopolis when that story broke, and the people I was with were kind of going crazy that this information was finally getting out and Lula was finally going to get out. Glenn Greenwald has done some great reporting. That being said, I will quote my co-host on this, that maybe he should get off of Twitter. I need to introduce my homie, my dog. He is a writer for Black Agenda Report, Huffington Post. He's got an upcoming book on Zero Books. He's the guy you really want to see, Pascal Robert.
My man, Jason Miles, how you living, brother?
I'm all right. I'm going shirtless because I was watching. Well, because I was watching those George Benson videos last night. I was sending you George Benson videos last night. Yes, That motherfucker was roller skating in Venice Beach with a sport coat and no shirt on. I was like, if George Benson's ass can do it, I can do it.
So you wanted to show off the taco meat? Is that what it was?
It's a Taco Meat Thursday, brother. And with that in mind, we need to introduce our favorite communist, economist, bearded one. He is Dr. Asatar Bair.
Dr. Bair.
Just want to remind everyone, my eyes are up here, so stop staring at this. Those who don't know me, I'm a professor of economics at Riverside City College, and I also teach meditation. I've got a YouTube channel, share some of my lectures. Go and check it out, youtube.com/Asatar Bair.
There will be a link in the description to Dr. Bair's YouTube channel. I'll actually put a link up on the chat to the YouTube channel because I've been trying to check it out and meditate because I need to get done with this show and then I prepare for like the next show and I have to do so much reading that my mind is going too much and all that, and I have to know all the different wheels on the buses for my 2-year-old because there's a whole bunch of these different wheels on the bus. There's a whole fucking channel for an hour of wheels on the bus, a different remix every time.
It's a lot to keep in mind.
You like the wheels on the bus go round and round song?
There's a hip hop version that's stuck in my fucking head as we speak.
Oh man,
it's funky though.
That's traumatizing.
Do you ever see that version? It was like llama with the red pajamas.
Yeah, llama red pajamas.
Yeah, except this book was read on I don't know, Hot 97 or something like this by Migos, that rap band, right?
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
I'm just wanting to let you know how much it's traumatizing me to know that Dr. Bair knows who Migos is.
Dr. Bair knows. Okay, real talk. Dr. Bair knows hip hop because Dr. Bair, you'll be talking to him like, you know what this reminds me of? There was that beat on the third Fugees record that no one bought but me.
Like, I do love that album, but I'm not going to claim that I know hip hop in this milieu because somebody
know hip hop.
That's probably not going to be true.
You know hip hop more than you let on to, and that's there was all these clips that I had, and there definitely was some hip hoppy ones because I also wanted to talk. Well, let's actually before we get into that, there's two things I want to get into before we get into the real things, which were we never asked Dr. Bair the questions from the first time he was on when we had the show called "Does Marxism Work for Black People?" But we have to address this real quick. So, Dr. Bair. Glenn Greenwald recently said that he thinks that Tucker Carlson in the context of today 2021 that Tucker Carlson and like Steve Bannon are socialists.
Yeah, well, I think when capitalism gets into crisis like it is now, we're in the midst of like this, the pandemic, right, has just gone on for a year and has created a mass unemployment crisis. It's created an eviction crisis. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on. The economy has been battered by this, but we were probably in at least secular, maybe full-blown recession even before it started. So, we're in a situation where capitalism is having problems, and in that context, lots of people issue critiques of capitalism. Like capitalism is, after all, a pretty brutal system. A system that leaves millions of people each year to starve despite a global food surplus. I think when capitalism is on the ropes, you kind of look like an idiot if you don't say at least some things that are kind of critical. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Carlson is doing. That doesn't make you a socialist at all. I mean, in fact, Marx and Engels talk about this in the Communist Manifesto, right? They say there's a thing called bourgeois socialism, right? I mean, this is basically like those who want certain reforms or, who want to improve the status of the working class in order to ensure that it remains exploitable, right? So I think that's more like what we're seeing. I would be a little concerned about calling somebody like, Tucker Carlson is a bourgeois apologist, an ideologist, right? Not a socialist at all.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Did you see that, Pascal? Somebody said, I think it's, who is this that said that? Someone just said the fascists critique capitalism too.
Right.
That's true. That's true. But well, I mean,
Antonio, shout out.
What's telling to me about Greenwald's statement about Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon being quote unquote socialists, which I don't believe that they're socialists by any stretch of the imagination, is how we've come to this position where we're seeing what some people would say are two types of populism, right? I remember in the 2016 election was occurring with the rise of Trump on the right, and you had Sanders on the left. There was this kind of discourse people were having about how America is dealing with two different types of quote unquote populism. And I would like to hear from Dr. Bair, does he agree that what the Sanders faction offer is just a left version of a right-wing populism that was being broached by Trump, that I don't think he ever really turned into a reality? Or are we just seeing a reactionary right-wing politics trying to appropriate the discontent of large segments of working class American society that happen to be white, that are their normal acolytes, and ginning them up with, some sense of, yeah, we understand what's really the problem, but don't forget it's those Mexicans taking your jobs as well. That's really the issue here, and that's why the system's not working. And the crony capitalists also, yeah, that's a problem too. So the question I'm really kind of asking you, right, is that, one, do you think that, are we in a position, or were we, or are we, but we have these two different types of rival fascisms? Or is the right-wing version really just a pretext for a more kind of just, reactionary right-wing nationalist politics that has no basis at all whatsoever in any type of populist or working class agenda whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the answer is basically yes. I mean, there's lots of different forms of populism. I don't love that term because what does it mean, right? It means, like, I don't know, something that is popular or that some people like or something. I mean, it's just so ill-defined. I mean, clearly, like, what Trump has done, and I think what Trump is a master of, is creating a very fervent fan base, and how does he do that, right? I mean, it's a variety of different appeals, right? I mean, some of these appeals are just straight up racist, right? I mean, some of them are xenophobic. But there is a core, which is a kind of an appeal to the working class, right? There is, and I think without that, Trump wouldn't have gotten the kind of traction that he got, right? There's also an anti-elitist, an liberal media, right? All of this stuff. The elites are laughing at you. They're smug and all this. I mean, I think that there's stuff here that touches upon people's lived experience in a way that is powerful, right? To tell people, look, there's a shadowy cadre of insiders in Washington, D.C. that run the government, and we're going to get rid of them. Now, of course, he's not doing that, but just to tell people that, right? To say, hey, that thing that you've been thinking your whole life, there's a secret group that runs things. Now, by the way, is Trump's version of that true? No, right? But is that true, broadly speaking? Of course it is. I mean, are you kidding me? Look around, right? I mean, it is absolutely the case that a relatively small number of very rich people run the United States and the world, right? I mean, so the broad outline is speaking to something that people can relate to. I mean, Trump also spoke to issues like, the hollowing out of the manufacturing base of the United States, and, criticized NAFTA and whatever. Now, he didn't do anything about this, during his term in office, right? That's not the game. This is a game of bait and switch, right? Doing something about these things is hard, right? I mean, that would take real political leadership, which Trump doesn't have, to be honest, right? He's a good ideologue, but he's not a good leader. I mean, good leadership means you got to forge these consensuses, right? I mean, and that's very hard to do, right? Even when you have like majority support in the Congress. So yes, I think that Trump has a version of something that is compelling on a mass level. But like to bring in Marxism here, right? Marx and Engels, like in the Communist Manifesto, elsewhere, talk about, look, we have the creation of the working class. That's historically new, right? That gets created by capitalism itself. Capitalism brings together workers and puts them in an economic situation that is similar to one another, whereas before they were in situations that were very different from one another. It also puts them together spatially. It creates mass communication. The world gets linked together through trade and globalization, right? All of which is arguably much more true now than in the 1840s or the 1860s, when Marx and Engels were writing. So the creation of the working class, right, as a motive force for history. Well, okay, so that's, I think that's broadly speaking, that's true, right? Well, so then the question is, can we divide this working class, right? Can we destroy their class consciousness, emerging though it may be, right? And break it up, encourage this large group of people, the majority in all societies, to see themselves as different from each other, right? On a racial basis, on a linguistic basis, on any kind of basis we like, right? Other than class. So, I think this is the difference, broadly speaking, right? In terms of what is a left-wing populism. A left-wing populism, a Marxist populism, says, let's look at the class position of the vast majority of the society, right? The vast majority of society are working class people. So, okay, what does that mean, right? That means this group of people has their surplus taken from them by others. Their work goes to enriching a small group of other people. It's in basically the majority's interest to overturn this system, right? Now, that's a very different kind of populist appeal, and that one we don't hear that very often, right? I mean, the Bernie Sanders version is, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of this, right? Bernie Sanders version is like saying, look, here's what people need. This, everyone needs healthcare, so let's do that, right? Or we need higher wages. Wages have been stagnating for 40 years in the United States. Let's have a strong minimum wage, or let's have free college. Now, these are all great things, and I support them. I like Bernie. I love Bernie, but we just want to admit that that's a different thing than saying, hey, the vast majority of Americans are being exploited. We could end that, right? Workers were to own the means of production, then we could do all of the policies that we want. We would have the money, and we would also have removed the ongoing basis which creates the situation. So my short answer is yes, there's lots of different kinds of populism.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because within the last 2 weeks, I was having a conversation on Zero Books with Doug Lane, and I was also invited to Ben Burgess's show to talk about another one of the kind of liberals or rad libs, if you want to call them, that is known, Matt Taibbi, who was criticizing someone who's considered a pretty respected kind of left, I would say Marxist philosopher, which was Marcuse. And one of the things that I found interesting in Marcuse's analysis, and I don't know how familiar you may or may not be with Marcuse, is that Marcuse's kind of analysis of America in the post-World War II era is that because of the largesse that American capitalism was able to provide, particularly with the rise of the New Deal, and the quality of lifestyle that it gave to workers, that their class consciousness had somewhat evaporated, and their desire to revolt or challenge the system had been neutralized by the capacity of capitalism to basically satiate them and provide them with the goods and services that they felt were at the time going to provide them a quality of life. And my question to you, in talking about the crisis of capitalism, do you actually believe that the American working class have class consciousness? This is something, as someone who is an anti-capitalist myself, that I interrogate all the time is that does the American working class actually see itself as a class, or do they see themselves as millionaires in waiting? In other words, is the class consciousness of labor extraction, surplus labor extraction at the hands of management and the ruling class and capital, something that is even remotely cognizant to the American worker?
I would also add, to cut in real quick, because I will disappear quickly after I add this. There's also an element of people that are waiting for the smart rich guy to give them the answer. So I think it's a mix of people waiting to be millionaires. I do think that's a subset of that population, right? Because we have hustle culture that is all about you're just going to be a millionaire when you think hard enough. But there's also people that are literally just like, well, Elon Musk is going to fix it. You know, he's going to send enough ventilators in San Francisco for us to fix our COVID problem. Bill Gates is going to find a vaccine.
I mean, I think with the author Mark, I think it's Mike Fisher. Mark Fisher has the book.
Mark Fisher.
Has the book Capitalist Realism that basically argues that the social and ideological infrastructure of capitalism is so ubiquitous that it basically makes it impossible to view any kind of alternative economic model outside of capitalism being able to provide for working class or American society. So I guess my question to you is that in the light of that argument that Marcuse was kind of making, and in the light of where we are in American society, as someone like yourself who was not only a Marxist but actually a communist, is that do you think, do you believe that the American worker, the American proletariat, if you will, has the kind of class awareness to actually challenge the functionality of capitalism in American society, or is he really just basically a bourgeois aspirant?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question to ask. I'm glad to hear that you struggle with this question yourself. I think I respect your thinking. It's not an easy question to answer. It's a very hard question. All these things are, right, because we're dealing with complexity and contradiction, right? So there's a lot of different threads here. So on the one hand, is it the case that there is a bourgeois ideology or a petty bourgeois ideology that sees everyone as a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, right? Yes, no question, right? I mean, this is funded, this is consumer culture, right? I mean, what kind of lifestyle do we see depicted on TV, in movies? I mean, we see the lifestyle of the top 10%. That's it, right? I mean, like a lot of people talked about the Friends apartment, back in the 1990s.
Oh God, yeah.
Right? What like young people can afford an apartment like that in Manhattan or where the hell they lived, right? I mean, you're not going to have an apartment like that in any major American city, right? Unless you happen to be, in that, you got to be in that top 10%, right? Or higher,
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, there's the concerted attempt to make us all aspire to be rich, right? No question about that, right? There's the consumerism and materialism, very, very strong. And yet, you can't cover up people's real material interests, right? And the fact of the matter is, right? I mean, like, we could get complicated about class, and a lot of this work I have done, right? I like complicated, sophisticated versions of class analysis. I like that. It's my stock and trade, right? But let's not do that. Let's just make it real simple, okay? How many of us have enough liquid wealth so that we could have a decent life and never work again? It's a pretty small group, right? I mean, how much liquid wealth do you need for that, right? I mean, I don't know, like $5-10 million or something. And by the way, this cannot include your house, right? Your house is not liquid wealth. Your house is something you're using right now, right? So, just on that basis, like, who's the working class? It's almost everybody, right? And we know this because, look, the overwhelming majority of Americans cannot raise $400 if they needed to, right, without borrowing. My God, right? Even the average person has nothing. Okay, we have some equity in our house, maybe we have some equity in our vehicle or whatever. But again, these are things we're using. We cannot. That's that's not liquid. That's not available wealth. If we look at liquid wealth, we have basically nothing. And so here we have a situation where, even for those who are high on the income ladder, you could still get hit with unforeseen medical bills, let's say, right? I mean, like Biden's own family, right, got hit with huge medical bills. This is not a poor person, right? So I think on the material level, you can't really fool people. I mean, you can make people aspire. Oh, yes, anybody can make it if you hustle hard enough, you grind hard enough. Okay. I mean, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. Certainly an aspiration. But do you have the money to pay your rent, right? Do you have anything to put aside for your future? What if you get sick, right? I mean, these are very real considerations, and I think we're seeing those get pushed to a new level of contradiction. Does that mean that there'll be an immediate socialist revolution? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any of the answers here. Like I'm trying to figure it out, just like we all are. I think Marxism has a good perspective on this, though. It says we need to figure this out together, like on a kind of mass level. We need to think about it. We need to talk about it. We need to think about, well, what would we like to see in society, right? We need to stop accepting like, oh, society can't be like that. Why not, right? We need to have the courage to imagine something new. And I think Marxism can help with that, right? Because Marxism, looks at things like, what would society be like if we were to eliminate one class of people living off the labor of another, right? And that's a very, bold kind of thought experiment to go through.
No, I mean, I definitely get you saying it. Jason, do you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, the boy just walked in, so that's why I moved back. Sorry. Finish your thought.
So I mean, and I understand the complexity of that, and one of the challenges that I find, right, in trying to, do the political education to try to people understand that you should at least have a criticism or a critique of capitalism based on how this, the not only the scarcity that it contributes to in terms of wealth redistribution, or the way in which it requires a reserve labor army to be rendered to redundancy. Not only to mention the the environmental damage and a variety of other things, but in saying that, one of the things I often wonder is that, will it require a complete collapse of capitalism on the terms of its own internal contradictions? Or is there even really, in the American context, is there really, a quote unquote revolutionary proletariat? Or are we basically trying to prepare people as to how to make or demand concessions from the ruling class in the wake of impending collapse? In other words, as people who would be considered on the left, is our actual function here? Are we actually trying to galvanize people to revolt against the capitalist order? Are we really just basically playing towards a politics of reformism, basically making a demand upon the ruling class to slightly, tinker with the functions of the economy in American society to improve racial redistribution, maybe a Keynesian version 2.0 or a New Deal 2.0, and let the capitalist machine rolling? Will it take an actual collapse? What? And these are questions for me that I don't see too many people on the so-called left engaging in or indulging in terms of what exactly are the actual realities on the ground that are going to be necessary to give people the kind of class consciousness and awareness to realize, hey, listen, this system is not working for the majority of us. We need to have significant structural changes, or if you want to say, maybe a revolt or revolution.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the question. You know, what this makes me think of a little bit is, you know, I like to do martial arts. It's one of my hobbies. I do judo, and I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. And you know, a lot of times it's like you go in sparring or whatever. You're having a fight, basically stylized fight, right? And you want to like plan it out and think about, okay, they do this, I'm going to do this, right? Like get a map, get a fight plan. That can be useful. But you know, I've just noticed for myself, when you go in with that and it's too like locked in too hard in your mind, it tends to go haywire for me. Like it tends to we're not even close to being on the plan, you know? I think a better is to be in the flow, right? I mean, what do we push for, a reform or revolution? I think it depends on the conditions, you know, but I do think you want to be pushing to make people's lives better. I mean, it's absolutely the case that changing laws, what we call reforms, can do a huge amount of good, right? It can make people's lives better. So, well, let's start there, right? I mean, and let's see, well, is there then an interest? Is there a push? Does that awaken people's imagination? Is there a sense, hey, we could go a lot further here, you know? You know, I think that you kind of need, because it sounds so overwhelming to say, hey, we can do a revolution and we're going to change everything. Yeah, that's pretty overwhelming, right? How do you approach this total project, right? Very difficult, right? But I mean, I think the answer that communists have always given it is a good one, which is you organize in the way that seems pressing right now, right? So, hey, people are getting evicted. Let's prevent that from happening. You know, let's create a tenants union, right? Or, you know, workers are losing their job. Okay, well, let's get active around this in some way, right? Maybe by challenging the employer, maybe by challenging the state. But, you know, we need a whole variety of tactics. We need to be throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks, and then following and going where the traction is, right? Where the juice is. So, I mean, I don't know. It makes it sound like I have the answers. I don't, you know, I don't have the answers. But I think we need to ask the question, take it seriously, you know, and not get into some kind of nihilism that says we can't do anything, but not fall into, you know, idealism either that says like, oh, if only we have the right theory, then it'll all happen or something. No, I mean, what we've seen historically is that changing society is very, very hard. I mean, it takes immense sacrifice, right? And so, I mean, we're going to do what we can, you know. But I think that at a minimum means talking about it and taking the ideas seriously, developing concrete plans, and, you know, trying to learn from them. To the extent that people say it's scientific or whatever, I would agree on that basis, right? That if there's a process of learning and development.
Sorry, I was typing. So, did we answer the Glenn Greenwald, Steve Bannon question? Is everybody satisfied with that? Because we've spent more time than I would like to have spent on it.
I think we did.
The conversation definitely got deeper.
I think we're having a good conversation. I mean, we're talking about as a Marxist communist. One of the things that we didn't get a chance to ask you about that I'd like you to really elaborate on, because this is a very important part of, you know, the Marxist intellectual tradition. Define it for us, and what does it mean, and why it's useful. Can you explain the terms dialectical materialism and historical materialism, what they mean and why they're helpful, and how do they work into, you know, an analysis of capitalism? Sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of confusion, or just a lot of questions around these terms. You know, Marx comes out of the German philosophical tradition, and, you know, had studied the work of Hegel very closely. And Hegel is known for his critique of formal logic, right? So Hegel argues the way that a lot of Western thought proceeds is through a very particular kind of logic, right? So formal logic that says, right, we have the law of identity, you know, like a thing is always equal to itself. A equals A, right? That's the law of identity. Or the law of the excluded middle, right? That says that A is equal to not A, right? Meaning there is there is existence, and then there's negation. And if you negate something twice, you come back to the original position, right? And this is like what we're taught in math class, to return to that way that the show began, right? And so Hegel, following in critiques of this that are old, right? They go back to the ancient Greeks. Hegel said, the problem with this formal logic, I mean, it has its place, right? But the problem with it is that it assumes that, basically things are static, essential qualities. Everything has static, essential qualities. Well, all right, but how do you explain that the world seems to be pretty much in constant change? I mean, why does change occur, right? If A equals A, if a thing is always equal to itself, how does it become a different thing? Like where? That's a kind of a hole in formal logic, and that makes it weak for explaining change, particularly big changes, qualitative changes where something turns into something quite different, right? Revolutionary changes. So Hegel, developed this, right? Let's have an alternative kind of logic, a logic that is premised on contradiction. And, he called this dialectics, right? Dialectical logic. So, and, Marx studied this very carefully, right? But Marx said, look, Hegel has a kind of problem, which is that, he seems to think that if he comes up with the right idea, has this sort of, right logic or whatever, that whatever he comes up with is then going to be true, right? And Marx says, this is idealism, like to think that your ideas determine everything else, like this is breaking from this kind of logic, right? If we're focusing on complexity and contradiction, how are we so sure that the way we think about things is the critical piece there, right? How do we know that that's, the thing that makes everything else happen? We don't, right? So Marx tries to adjust this, right? He says we want to take that approach, right? We want to take that focus on change into the social sciences and especially into economics. And we have the same kind of problem there, like in a lot of economic thought is very much affected by this formal logic perspective that says, oh, there's a certain essence of all economic phenomena, like, anybody who's taken this stuff learns about like supply and demand, right? So we have the law of demand, right? I mean, here's an essence that is supposed to work for markets. And Marx rejects a lot of this, right? And says, that's not a good way of proceeding. There is no fixed essence. The economy is in constant flux. So, and yet there's tendencies that we want to explore. We want to understand these, right? These are not simple tendencies. They're things that could be reversed, right? Because there's always contradiction. So Marx, tried to come up with something new to call this, right? Because not only did he say there was certain problems within Hegel, but also Hegel was, kind of personally, like the kind of politics that he had, were pretty conservative, So like Marx is trying to kind of distance a little bit from the Hegelian tradition. So we want to use a sophisticated philosophy. We want the focus on change, but we don't want to be, reaffirming some kind of traditional way of life that is not really realistic in the era of capitalism. We don't want to go backwards into some kind of idealized version of the past. And so these terms, historical materialism, right, or dialectical materialism, were designed to try to correct what we're seeing as like the excesses of the Hegelian system, right? To correct the idealism of this system by focusing on instead on, well, what are the material conditions of people's lives, right? And so Marx's reversal of Hegel's is not the idea. The idea is not what determines everything else, right? We need to say, doesn't the material conditions of your life affect your consciousness? Doesn't it affect whether you have the time to sit down and read, the science of logic or whatever, right? Whether you have time to ponder philosophy? I mean, isn't that determined at least in part by what are, how many hours you have to work in order to make a go of it, et cetera, right? So, Marx's whole focus was on this contradiction, on the dynamic process of change. And I think that's a pretty good focus, right? Because in economics, if you want to say that economics has a fixed essence, which can be understood through mathematical equations, let's say, right? The big problem is, how do you know that's true, right? I mean, like, it's easy to come up with a fixed essence for things, but is it accurate? You know, how do you know? I mean, you know, the classic way you would do that is this big phrase that's used in economics, which is ceteris paribus. You assume everything else is being held constant, and the problem is we can only do that on paper, right? We can't actually do that for real, right? We cannot, because we can't hold anything constant in the economy. There's a billion things changing at once, right? So do we know that a certain cause is connected to a certain effect? Like, we don't, right? So, you know, how do we proceed here, right? I mean, if you want to tell me there's a fixed essence, then I'd say, okay, I'm willing to listen to that. But why don't you prove to me it's true? And how would you do that? Like, you gotta show me that you can predict what's going to happen, right? I mean, if you've got a lock on the fixed essence of things, prove it. You know, show me that you can predict what's going to happen in the economy in some meaningful way. It's like, oh, you can't do that? Because in fact, no economist is good at that? Well, maybe there's no fixed essence then, right? I mean, maybe it makes sense to use the logic of contradiction as Marx did, right? And this is what dialectical materialism is, or historical materialism, or, you know, my mentors in Marxism were Richard Wolff and Stephen Resnick, who has now passed away. Their preferred term for this, it was overdetermination, right? Meaning, you know, this multiplicity of causes that are all interwoven and interconnected and inseparable, really, that come together and produce effects in extremely complex fashion.
That answer your question? I did want to bring this up because someone tweeted this at us. They actually asked Pascal if we were going to address this. Something else I don't want to stay on too long, but since Dr. Bair is hip hop personified, I wanted to
say that
share this story. Damn it, sorry. Jay-Z sells a majority stake in his Tidal streaming service to my old boss, Jack Dorsey's company, Square. The Twitter CEO has inked a $297 million deal to take control of the formerly artist-owned platform. Square, the digital payment company run by Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, has acquired Jay-Z's streaming platform Tidal. As part of the deal, Jay-Z will move to Square's board of directors, and Tidal's artist owners will continue to co-own the platform as the second largest group of shareholders. Upon his well-publicized acquisition of the service in 2015 from the Norwegian company Aspiro, Jay-Z brought aboard artist owners including Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, Madonna, Lil Wayne, J. Cole, Coldplay's Chris Martin, Arcade Fire's Win Butler, and Regine Shahzani. Is this a moment for us, Pascal, to rejoice as Black people?
I mean, I think it's a moment for Jay-Z to rejoice that his profits and his share margin is going to go up. But I mean, listen, I mean, you know, we live in a capitalist society. Jay-Z is a capitalist. You know, he's worth, you know, some say
I think he's a billionaire now.
Yeah. He's a billionaire now. And, you know, what's more interesting to me about Jay-Z so much is not that, you know, he's selling his title company and he's going to cash in, is that, you know, within the context of, you know, the cultural industry, the Black culture industry, he is kind of elevated as this, you know, almost kind of not really social barometer of Black excellence that we should all collectively applaud to and say, yes, Jay-Z is doing it. And every time I hear people, you know, applaud for this, my first reaction is he giving y'all some stock? Are y'all getting a share? I mean, if Jay-Z is giving shares out to random members of the community, you know, as a product of his increasing his value, then, you know, okay, he's
making great. He made not by himself, but he was part of the production team that did the Khalif Browder docuseries. I thought was pretty good. Actually, so was Harvey Weinstein was on that team as well. And he was part of the team that did the Yusuf Hawkins documentary. His production company.
Well, this goes back. I mean, what's really particularly useful about you bringing up Jay-Z is that it goes back to my conversation about class consciousness, and we can use this in reference to the Black community of the United States, which, because of the utility of capitalism and race related to capitalism, are disproportionately reduced to the reserve labor of army and receive all the vicissitudes and harms that capitalism produces. But yet at the same time, the consequence of collective unified racial identity and collective community creates a social reality in which people feel that we, quote unquote, need to applaud for Jay-Z because one of us, quote unquote, is doing it. And what I was basically, this is an example of the reality. I guess it's a kind of example of a capitalist realism, right? Is that particularly in the way in which collective identity is part of the ways in which Black folk in America, if not globally, have viewed themselves relative to America's tortured racial history. How exactly does one create a paradigm in which individuals who are disproportionately adversely affected by capitalism, who are Black, but are constantly inundated with social imagery, cultural imagery of what's considered Black excellence? I was watching a video the other day of Sean Combs at Rick Ross's new home in Atlanta. Rick Ross, what the biggest house in Atlanta is 25,000 square feet. Something
for one dude and maybe a small handful of kids.
100 bedrooms, like 21 bathrooms. And what's fascinating to me is that this the bombardment of these images of quote unquote Black media excellence masking the real world consequences of Black life is something that I think is intentional, is not accidental, and it creates an illusion in the minds of large segments of the Black community that they are vicariously living through these celebrities. And in the wake of that kind of vicarious consciousness, how does one create a consciousness where one can say, this system is not working for me? When you say at the same time, right now, this is the culture industry version, right? You got the entertainment industry version with the Jay-Z, the Rick Ross, and then you have the political version of that kind of, aspirational Black excellence with Chucks and Pearls, Kamala Harris, Obama, the new Black political class, my vice president is Black, all of this kind of Black girl magic, all of these ways in which the culture industry manipulates collective Black identity, all in the interest of furthering a system that disproportionately disadvantages Black people in America. And when you begin to interrogate and challenge these obvious contradictions, many people in the Black community were like, "Oh, you're just hating. You're just a hater." I was like, "I'm a hating, but you're talking about how you want reparations and you all are a caste in America, but at the same time you celebrating, Jay-Z selling title and Rick Ross buying his 25,000 square foot mansion."
Well, here's where it also becomes somewhat problematic because, when Jay-Z makes these claims of like facing racism in these 1% circles, then it kind of gets put back to Black people like, well, look, he's just like you because he faces the same white supremacist violence that you face in his 1% circle because, he's a rich in, but he's not the richest in, and therefore white supremacy.
Right. No, it creates this conundrum, right? Because, the fallacy. I wrote a piece of Black Agenda Report. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, called the fallacy of racial kinship politics, which talks about how this kind of collective sense of racial identity in the political context becomes dangerous because you end up getting kind of corporate pawn politicians like your Cory Booker types or your Obama types or your neoliberals or even worse, who use their racial quote unquote bona fides to receive the support of large segments of the Black community, while at the same time will implement policies that directly disadvantage those same communities. And when you try to expose this to many people in the Black community, there's a kind of resistance, because for such a long part of the narrative of the Black experience in America, there was this kind of the illusion of we're all in this together against the man. It's us versus whitey. And it becomes very complicated when you're discussing how class internally within the Black community affects outcomes, and not only affects outcomes, but also affects how policy is relegated to certain segments of the Black community. It becomes somewhat difficult for people to actually start to question these realities and start to realize that you have class enemies within your own quote unquote community, if you'll call it that happen to look like you. And that has always been the case.
Absolutely. I mean, those are great points. It kind of reminds me of that classic sketch by Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you're a fan, but he says, I'm Black. There's nothing I can do about that, but I'm going to do the next best thing. I got rich, and right. So I'm rich, and I'm also Dave Chappelle, right? So, okay. I mean, and I think there's something that's, comedians can do this, right? They can get honest in a way that, maybe other entertainers can't, right? Which is like, I'm living a different life now, and I'm going to be less affected by racism. I mean, like Dave Chappelle talks a lot about racism, right? I mean, but he also says, look, I'm a lot less affected by it now, right? Being rich and Dave Chappelle. So, I mean, that's interesting, right? Because for white people, I mean, this is the same exact playbook, right? I mean, aspire to this lifestyle, right? It's just that it's hegemonic, right? I mean, this is the kind of almost a wall-to-wall kind of ideology, right? And almost everybody who is, depicted in the media and whatever. I mean, this is what white supremacy does.
I don't deny, Dr. Bair, that this exists for the larger white society as well. But what is particularly noxious about this phenomenon when you're dealing with Black people in America is, number one, the element of manufactured racial allegiance. In other words, y'all can't hate on Jay-Z because Jay-Z faces racism just like us, creates a barrier to the ability to see Jay-Z or the Obamas or Kamala Harris as class enemies, as people who will support economic policy, class policy, other kind of policies, or politics, or a system that is disproportionately disadvantaging Black people. That's one.
Yeah, and that doesn't exist for within the white community or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And two, another problem is that because of the way capitalism is racialized in America, the disproportionate blunt of this kind of symbolic aspirationalism is going to further neutralize a critique of the system that renders Black people disproportionately to that reserve army of labor. And what ends up happening, right, is that you will hear people say, like, we've got to talk about racism without racism. And my question I always ask people who say, well, racism is a problem. I said, listen, if white people didn't have the material and economic power to affect your life in any way, would you care that they didn't like you? No, really.
Not really. No,
yeah,
that's how I feel.
If the material actual power that gave the white majority the capacity to influence you with policy, politics, food, commerce, whatever else that shapes your reality, if the material power was removed from them, or distributed equally, whatever the mechanism, but was removed from them, and they could not materially in any way affect harm on you that had anything to do with your life, would you care that they had antagonism towards you? I don't know too many people who would care. And my point is that then that's why talking about challenging racism and not challenging capitalism is ridiculous. Because what makes racism pernicious is that the quote unquote racists have a material hegemony on the means of production that adversely affect your life.
Absolutely. And I remember last time I was on the show, you said I'm not a Marxist, but you sound like one right now. I mean, I'll just say I love it. Of course, right? We have to think about what are the impacts, not just does an ideology exist, what are the impacts on your material life, right? And, that's something that, Marxism tries to really emphasize. And, that's the right question to ask, right? Because, I mean, this is essentially kind of like, maybe how the rich might view it, right? Like, does it matter if I'm hated? I'm still rich,
Isn't that? I mean, I don't know if you guys remember when Dog the Bounty Hunter. Remember that horrible show, Dog the Bounty Hunter? He got caught saying the N-word on his phone, and I don't know if you heard that phone conversation, but it was pretty. He said the N-word more than me and half the rappers I know. He dropped N-bombs. Did you hear that conversation, Pascal, when Dog the Bounty Hunter was saying the N-word? Basically, his son was dating a black chick, and the black chick had threatened, for some reason, he's got a lot of kids, first of all, and this kid was on the show. He's his son. The black girl had threatened to go to the house and like record them talking, because I guess they just dropped N-bombs all up in the house. And wow. so Dog is on the phone. His son recorded the phone call, and you just hear him go, "Son, man, you can't bring her up in here, man. She says she's gonna ruin everything." And the son's like, What do you mean? What do you mean? He's trying to get his dad to say it. He's like, "Look, son, you know what I mean. We say nigger in this house. I don't mean like scum of the earth, piece of shit, dirty, low down nigger. I just mean nigger. And we can't have her record." and he went on his apology tour soon after that, because all these black people were hell of offended that in a private conversation with his son, he said some things that maybe he shouldn't have said. But it was a private conversation with his son. I kind of don't give a shit what people say in private. You don't want to hear anything I say in private.
Well, the larger point that we're discussing here is that one of the consequences of this kind of fictive racial kinship, right, is that people like Jay-Z, Oprah, and Kanye West, they will talk about racism all day, but they will never have you challenge the material and economic realities rooted in political economy, i.e. capitalism, that require black people to be disproportionately ground to powder by this system.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just be honest about the nature of the system. Somebody needs to get ground into powder. I mean, that is absolutely the case. That's how it works, right? And there's layers to this shit, I mean, and Marx and Engels make this very clear, right? I mean, there is this lumpen group, right? This lumpen proletariat, right? There is this reserve army of labor, reserve army of the unemployed, And then there are those who are, living a kind of more privileged existence, but they're still workers, right? I mean, and I count myself here, right? Like, I mean, I'm a professor, I earn a good living, but I am one paycheck away from destitution. That is absolutely the case, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, am I part of this working class? I mean, I'm certainly more privileged than a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that, right? But does that make me not exploited, right? Does that mean that I have significant ownership of the means of production? Not at all, right? I mean, like I said, right? I'm one paycheck away from losing everything, just like almost everybody in the United States.
No, that's so true. That's why, again, I hate the and I'm glad Pascal has the paper that he wrote about it for Black Agenda Report. I actually put a link to it in all of the chats for everywhere the show is streaming. So please check that out. And I'll put a link in the description when it goes up on YouTube for that article that he wrote in Black Agenda Report, because, I got into it with my kids about this very discussion. This whole, like, I don't care that Jay-Z says, that people call him bad names, possibly in the halls of the 1%. You know, the fact that he's in the 1% should mean something to you. He's got $1 billion. You know what I mean? Like that should be a problem for you in general, not the fact that you think he doesn't own any sort of means of production, so he's not a real player in the game. Like, that's just foolish.
Well, I mean, part of the problem, I have a big problem with that analysis, and you get that a lot from particularly nationalists or people who are big on this kind of like race first politics. It was like, oh, the black elite really don't have any power. They don't own means of production. What they do own is the ideological infrastructure of the politics in your black community that gets you voting for Democrats that ground your community to dust every 4 years and implement new neoliberal agendas. They control your churches. They control your HBCUs. They control your fraternities, your sororities. They control your membership organizations. They film the TV shows that you love. They star in the movies that you love, and they create the whole echo chamber that gets you to say, "Shucks and pearls, I love Miss Kamala Harris as my VP," and all of the other nonsense that stops you from being able to interrogate why your politics doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I think the focus on means
This
of
is, and to Dr. Bair, as I told you, I said I use Marxism as a tool to challenge capitalism. I'm not an orthodox Marxist. Marxism is a tool for me, somewhat like a karate chop, if you will. It's a tool to critique, challenge, and combat capitalism. But the term that is normally used in colonial discourse is the comprador elite, the comprador or the national bourgeoisie. In other words, the comprador, in terms of classical kind of colonial discourse, is the class of people who live within a society that work for the foreign or European actual colonial power, but manage the power to the benefit of those Europeans, while at the same time maintaining the same kind of collective identity of the majority of the masses of people. So at the same time, you may say that the black elite or the black professional class or the black misleadership class do not own the quote unquote means of production in the United States. They function in the same context as a comprador elite. In other words, they may not own the means of production, but they are a buffer class and negotiate the political interests of the ruling class and the governing society in a way that always infiltrates into the black community to the betterment of the ruling class. So what that means is that they are a necessary function to the maintenance of the system that keeps black people at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. I think, the only point I was going to make is just a kind of a minor one, but an economic one, which is like, what is means of production, right? Means of production is factories. Means of production is land, right? But modern capitalism has a very fluid kind of relationship to capital and to liquid wealth, right? So is liquid wealth capital? Well, Marx has some interesting things to say about this, right? Like what makes something capital is if it's in a process of the expansion of value, right? So liquid wealth by itself is not capital, right? An asset by itself is not capital. That's a static thing, like, hey, I got a suitcase of money. There's $10 million in it. Not really. But what if I did, right? Okay, is that capital? No, it's a bunch of money, right? What if I take that $10 million and invest in stock with it? Okay, well, now you've converted it into financial capital, right? Capital of a particular kind. Well, so is that means of production? Well, no, right? It's not something that directly produces wealth, but it is a share of ownership of something that is involved in that, right? So, I think, means of production, it's a useful term, but we just have to recognize that there's people who have a lot of liquid wealth, and they're maybe one step removed from the means of production. Okay, so if you are a multimillionaire and we're talking liquid wealth, could you convert that into land, factories? Maybe you have it in stocks and bonds right now. Could you convert it into means of production? Absolutely, right? And would you do that if you liked the rate of return there? Sure, right? Capitalism is going through a process of financialization, right? So where the rate of return on financial assets is often much higher than the rate of return on real productive investment. Now that causes a whole host of different problems for capitalism, and it has contradictions. The big exception to that is if the productive kind of investment is a monopoly, right? So we know that capitalism goes into this, right? It goes into a extreme monopoly kind of phase, and we're living in that right now. So I don't know if this is, but it's just kind of what I thought of when we're thinking, oh, is Jay-Z a capitalist or whatever member of this capitalist class? I would say, sure, like he doesn't even have to own a factory to be a member of the capitalist class.
Someone's asking, is the declining rate of profit a real tendency, and what does it mean for social democratic class compromise?
Oh, bring it on.
I know they're not asking me that question.
They want you to karate chop it.
So the Marx in the third volume of Capital talks about what he calls the law of the tendential fall in the rate of profit. Marx considers it one of his great contributions to economic theory. And it's interesting. It's something that Marx never really finished, because the third volume was notes that Engels edited after Marx's death. But I think the basic outline of it is, yes, very much valid. What Marx says is, through the process of competition, every individual, and in the search of higher profits, every individual capitalist has the incentive to try to raise productivity, right? And I mean, has that been borne out by the last 150 years of capitalist development? Yeah, absolutely, right? Of course you want to do that. But what happens as productivity rises? Well, it forces all other capitalists to do the same, right? So you don't have just one firm engaging in whatever this new innovation is that raises productivity. There's pressure on everyone to do the same, because the one who's raised productivity takes the product into market, and they tend to then lower the price for everybody, right? This is a very strong tendency. We see this operating all the time, right, for the last 150 years. Now, does it always operate? No, right? I mean, so Marx says, look, there's counter tendencies that also take place, and he spends a lot more time actually on the counter tendencies. And this is consistent with the kind of logic of contradiction that we talked about before, right? There is not a straight line in the economy, right? There's not a fixed essence. There's not this is the way that capitalism works, or a pure capitalism or something like that. No, right? Society's a mess. Capitalism is full of contradictions and fractures, and these pull it in different directions at once, right? So are there times when the profit rate rises? Yes, absolutely, right? Profits can rise because of monopolization. They can rise because of colonialism and imperialism. They can rise because of capturing a market, keeping out your competitors, right? Or getting, using your influence with the state to get advance notice of some kind of development. Or, I mean, these are all like, the things that we've seen in US capitalism for the last 50 years, or really since the very beginning. So I would say, yes, it's a real tendency. It's counteracted by all kinds of things, right? The whole financialization of the economy is one of the things that Marx mentions, right? But we've seen a lot of development of that occurring since then as well, right? The finance part of the U.S. economy has grown, much more rapidly than any other sector. So, that's one of the things that's key here. The kind of money creation, money printing that we've seen, like just since the pandemic started, the central bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve, created about $3.5 trillion of new money, which they immediately injected into financial markets, right? Bought up trillions of dollars of financial assets, boosting the prices of these assets, right? So again, there's a very high rates of return in finance. Does that contradict the law of the tendential fall in the rate of profit? I don't think so, right? I don't see it that way at all, right? An essentialist understanding, right? An idea that says, oh, Marx said profit rates are always going to fall. Oh, he's wrong. Well, that's not a very good reading of Marx, right? That doesn't that doesn't take the method into account very well. I mean, that's a kind of like, I read the back of the book, but didn't read the book.
So we have there's a lot of comments on this. Shout out to the OG Janice Graham.
Janice Graham is on the show. Shout out to Janice Graham.
So I'd mentioned something to somebody in the chat. I'm not sure if you guys have followed it. I think you got the same text I got from Teray about the New York Times article on the Smith College. Have you checked that out at all, Dr. Bair?
I haven't read the article, but I've heard about the controversy. Go ahead, elaborate.
I just want to be real quick about it because we actually stole Dr. Barry's over an hour already. You guys blew through an hour as usual.
And
so
we have
go ahead. He had, Pascal snuck one in. The about a half hour in, that was one of the questions on the list. He snuck that shit in. Good sneak in there, fucking OG. I wish I could show you guys the questions that Pascal has for Dr. Bair. Anyway, so it's Smith College, a very well-to-do college in Northampton, I believe Smith College is. Anyway, a black student there said that she was caught eating while black. She was a TA in the summer, I believe, and she was eating in a dorm's cafeteria that they didn't want employees at. And I guess they had some kind of youth program there at the time. So like no employees can eat at this cafeteria. She was warned by a cafeteria worker. Of older janitor saw her there. He was in his 60s. I think he'd been at the place for like 30 years. And basically said he was told, if you see anyone here that's not supposed to be here, don't try to talk to them, just call campus security. Well, the guy goes over and talks to her. He calls campus security per his guideline. The janitor and campus security talk to the young lady. They think it's over and done with. That night she goes home and writes a very angry Facebook post about everything. The dean of students has I don't want to say checkered record, but just has a record of being kind of an irresponsible white person, as they would say on the Boondocks. And so she jumps in to have an apology, and people are put on leave, and it becomes a whole big to-do, and now everybody's got to get implicit bias training. And so a third party did an investigation and found that there was no racial discrimination, like literally they were just like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. And first she was like, oh, you know what, I kind of knew that, my bad, walked away. Then it got turned into some whole big thing. So the next day after she writes her thing and she gets the pat on the back that, you are the victim, I should take that out. She goes and puts the faces of people she thought snitched her out on social media, doxing them. And one of the cafeteria workers, like, it's hard for her to get a job now because she's deemed the racist. Mm. Now, this is a black girl going to a well-to-do college, and in this environment, as you guys know that have been to well-to-do colleges, the students have a lot more leeway with staff than staff has with students, right? Staff are a little bit more beholden to their rich students. So they're afraid sometimes of certain confrontations they're going to have with students. The girl also wrote that she was afraid for her life when campus security was there because he had a gun that could end her life, and campus security does not have firearms. So there's that. And that's the kind of the.
So, I mean, what we're saying is that a case of kind of like a mistaken protocol is being reported in the media as some kind of major racial brouhaha. I mean, I just think that it was a mistake. I mean, it was a couple of mistakes. Maybe she felt, I mean, she's a black girl at a predominantly white school. I don't think it's illogical for her to feel like they might have been racially profiling her by selecting her to tell her to leave. I'm not saying that was the motivation, but it just seems to be just like a kind of on all sides. This is kind of like much to do about too much.
I'm putting my feelings in the. Can you guys see that on the screen? What Brother Michael Brown wrote. Can you see that?
Sounds like rich N-word problems.
So Teray Reed sent that to us, and I read it, and we were going back and forth about it because me and him were actually talking about something else similar to that. It is to me sound like silly shit, and it's that class politics that gets ignored when the problem is always white supremacy. Like there's a very big difference between. Sorry, I don't know. Can you see that? Phoenix is talking to me. I've just been summoned. He's got to hear. You think I'm lying? He's got to hear Wheels on the Bus. You think I'm lying? So while I'm talking to you, if you hear Wheels on the Bus, a hip hop version, you get to moving. That's his black ass right there.
I mean, I'm not familiar with this story, so I should probably not comment. But it sounds a little bit like something that the right wing would like to get hold of and be like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the kind of like
happening right
the wokeness is smothering our lives. It's too much. It's everywhere. Oh my God.
It's definitely one of those stories that the right. Oh, okay. Sorry. Wheels on the Bus. Wheels. Did you hear that? He looked at me like, if you don't play Wheels on the Bus.
Did you see the comment earlier that people thought that you were like breaking it down for your 3-year-old about like the nature of capitalism and imperialism and stuff? And I mean, I'm sure you do. That's just being a good parent.
So there was a few things that would quiet him down when he was a baby. Noam Chomsky speaking, and to this day, sadly, Michael Brooks, when he would hear the music from Michael Brooks show, he would get his attention. He still kind of does. And when the Democracy Now! Music comes on, he'll stop what he's doing and he'll kind of watch it with me. He's a funny dude. He's literally got a hold on. I want to show you, but the bedroom's a mess and his mama will beat the shit out of me. So don't say anything. Shh.
He's got his yellow truck.
Oh, his black ass will be there all night.
He's really cute.
So, Janice Graham with the incendiaries, like the Karens colluding on Cuomo, horn on the bus, Me Too going wild.
Well, wasn't that what the original woman that founded Me Too, wasn't that her big fear? That Me Too was going to start getting weaponized? Look at my mom hating on me. Was gonna and I don't know if Jacobin did a thing about it today. I watched a little bit of it because I also got interrupted by the bus and its wheels. And again I read the article and I would say I'm skipping over it. It's a little more in depth, especially when it comes into the dean's kind of mishandling of some things. Like I guess they had a conference about book banning and somehow Huck Finn came up in there and there was someone from the ACLU that used the actual N-word. They didn't say N-word, and then the dean got kind of shat on for that. Like, come on, man, you can't have people just willy-nilly yelling out N-word around here. So she was very, very frightened. So her first thing to do was like, look, you telling me to shush? Like, okay, we got to push back on this and we have to, punish these people that wronged this girl. And if she says she was harmed, she was harmed, even though the third-party investigation that the school did showed that there was no wrongdoing whatsoever. Wrongdoing in the sense that no one came up to her and was like, hey, Darky, you got to go. It wasn't like the lady that called the cops on the people having a barbecue in Oakland, or the kid in, I think it was San Francisco, that was selling water that got the cops called on him. It wasn't one of those situations at all. And there's a class element to that situation that people just don't like to talk about.
But isn't there a lot of, aren't all of the Me Too moments kind of have a class tag? How many working class women are we hearing talking about Me Too? It seems to be developing into a politics of kind of elite women.
There were some broke women that sat down with Harvey Weinstein. I wouldn't say all the women that sat down with old Harv. was well to do. I'm sure some of them were struggling.
It does seem like the ones we heard about, though, the ones that gained traction were certainly, members of the elite, right? Or in some way, I mean, I think that's what made the story have legs, is that this kind of thing is common, but to have Hollywood celebrities be willing to speak out, that was new, right?
Yeah. No, Joanna's right. The fast food industry. Yeah, the fast food industry. Go ahead.
That the Me Too movement was started by a working class black woman, and that is true. So thank you for that corrective. But I think it has since that point been somewhat hijacked by largely elite women who are using it against elite men.
Yeah. But, I think the fact that a lot of the voices that really need to be heard on this don't get heard. So
like women, three men right now shouldn't be. As three men, we shouldn't really
be talking about Me Too.
We shouldn't be
moving on.
Barometer of Me Too. But Janice Graham says women have to learn if they want to run with dogs, they can't be scared to bark. Bark back. Woo!
Did you see what Jean Bajlan said? Jean Bajlan said that liberal arts colleges are Karen training institutions. You about to get fired. Tarana Burke. Yes, Tarana Burke. It's interesting when I see her, mostly it's on like some super lib shit, and there's always like a celebrity next to her to like validate that people should listen to her. And I mean, I'm sure that's not what Tarana Burke is thinking. And she brings up that shit when she talks about it, but no one ever publishes that part about it. It's always like, her and, insert celebrity female actress here. Can you hear it? Oh, okay. Did you have some more questions, guys? Is there any more questions?
Well, I mean, if we wanted to bring it back to the material basis, right? I mean,
we can get to some of the questions. I mean, one of the questions that we can talk about, particularly about Marxism, right? And this is a question, and I've made the questions to be challenging. Is that, first of all, why does it seem that countries that try to implement Marxist or socialist economic paradigms tend to be undemocratic? And why does America, as a capitalist society, seem to be able to maintain technological advancement in industry and technology better than most of those countries that claim socialism, which is a critique I often get from people who love Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. I think it's, again, to try to draw the connection between the kind of philosophy that we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of people, it's very, very common to say capitalism itself has a certain essence, and then socialism has a certain essence, and those different essences can be compared, kind of easily, right? And so most of the discourse about what is socialism and what is capitalism is trapped in this essentialism, as if capitalism is one essential thing, instead of being, I mean, how many varieties of capitalism are there, right, over the last 300 years of its history? To say that it's one thing, I don't know, that's just not very serious, and similarly about socialism, to say, oh, that's one thing. Now, there's a lot less data with socialism, right, because socialism is newer, right? I mean, the list of countries that have had some kind of socialist revolution is much shorter. So, but still, we have this kind of problem of essentialism. But I do want to address the question that you asked me, Pascal, by email, which was like, why do you think that the Soviet Union fell? What do you think some of its contradictions were? Because I think that this kind of comes in, right? Usually what people say to this, again, from the essentialized kind of perspective, is like, oh, well, there weren't the incentives for people to work hard, or people want freedom, or, stuff like this. That, I mean, even while you're saying it, doesn't that sound kind of like boilerplate? I mean, doesn't that like raise more questions than it answers? I mean, like if socialism lacks incentives, what about the phenomenon, many people have experienced this, of the low-wage, dead-end job that's pretty common under capitalism. Where are the incentives? I mean, like your incentive is not starve, I guess, right? I mean, but what do you think that you're going to get rich making $7.25 an hour? I mean, where is the incentive structure there? I mean, so that question is unanswered even by this very simplistic, essentialistic kind of position, right? If we take a more nuanced perspective, we'd say, well, socialism is trying to do something very new, something that has never before existed in modern history, right? A state that is, first of all, organized for the interests of the majority, right? So as Marx and Engels point out, that's not modern states, right? As far as we know, the history, that states are organized to advocate on behalf of a small minority. Right? That's been true since there have been states, okay? So we can go back to ancient Rome. We can go through the medieval period. We can talk about European feudalism. I mean, we talk about capitalism. The state is organized for the interest of the few. Now, so socialism is trying to do something very different, and is also trying to abolish the exploitation that is the basis of all modern societies. So, okay, when you are trying to hit a home run, I mean, when you're really swinging for the fences, that's very different than just trying to bunt the ball, right? I mean, and it's a lot harder, So we are, and of course, a lot of our thinking about this is shaped by anti-communist propaganda, right? So it's not like we're giving the socialist economies a fair hearing at all, right? I mean, we are, well, let's say the bourgeois ideologists, the apologists for capitalism, create the most unfair comparisons that they possibly can, and then present that as if, like, of course, right? Of course, it makes sense to compare the United States with Cuba. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, you don't need to know much about the facts of these two countries to say that is the worst comparison on earth, right? I mean, like the countries could not possibly be more different in terms of population, the history, the geography, right? I mean, in every possible way that you can think of. So, there's a lot of this just absolutely insane lack of context or wrong context, really. I mean, it's part of misinformation. But if I could just sort of say, in a nutshell, like, what do I think? Let me summarize the Soviet experience, since this is such a big one. The Soviet experience is a revolution against a very brutal and corrupt form of basically feudalism, right? That is, the society was ruled by the Tsar. And they had a very small, undeveloped form of capitalism within it, which, they were keen on seeing develop, but was the least developed capitalist country in Europe by far, right? So their immediate issue was, we need to rapidly develop the economy, right? And they had a kind of crossroads, which they were very honest about. I mean, this appeared in their debates and so forth. How do we rapidly industrialize the country? Now, first of all, industrialization is not given at all, right? I mean, it's not like that's some kind of automatic thing that just happens, right? And the Soviets were trying to make it happen much, much faster than it had happened in the industrialized powers of Europe, England, France, Germany, et cetera, right? And they did that, right? They actually succeeded in this. They industrialized the country with absolutely astonishing speed. They avoided the pitfall of the Great Depression of the 1930s. They industrialized and reached, going from the most backward country in Europe to a global superpower in, the space of 6-7 decades, right? So on that level, that's a stupendous accomplishment, right? Now, how did they do that, right? Did they do that by abolishing exploitation, conceived as one group of people is working and then their surplus is taken by another group? Well, the answer to that is clearly no, right? I mean, their surplus was taken by the state, right? The state is the only employer. So how do you square that, right? Marxism is against that. And, the Soviets were aware of this, right? Stalin talks about this in his addresses to the Congress and so forth. And, he says, well, this is where we are at our stage of development. We need to rapidly industrialize. We need the state to organize this. We need the state to defend ourselves, right? I mean, we just had this disastrous war against Germany, right? World War One. And we're forced to make concessions and cede part of our territory and all this, right? And Germany still wants, this territory, right? Still wants to invade. And so this is something that they're aware of in their early decades of their development. Now, they industrialize, but they also have tremendous successes on a human level, right? So the claim that they are organized for the benefit of the average person, I think there's something to that, right? Because I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? If you're organized for the average person, then are you making the average person's life better? And the answer very clearly is yes, absolutely, right? I mean, the Soviet state pours money into healthcare, right? They go from large regions of the country having essentially no medicine to building tens of thousands of hospitals, training hundreds of thousands of doctors. I mean, it's unreal. And they do this in a very, very short period of time, right? So not only that, but it's everyone has housing, right? Everyone has employment. This is still a poor country on a per capita level, right? So, they do a lot. But at some point, right, after the death of Stalin, the situation kind of begins to decay. And part of this is Khrushchev. Khrushchev turns against Stalin and says, there's a whole secret speech, right? So by doing that, he kind of drives a wedge into the revolutionary history of the Soviet Union from the very top, right? And then the situation begins to kind of unspool. There develops a large second economy. People get a lot of their income from, essentially the black market or the gray market, right? Stealing from the state and then selling it on the private market becomes incredibly common. And this weakens the collective sense that we're doing something very different, right? It's an individualist kind of moment which impinges on the work that they're trying to do for the whole, right? It weakens the state, and it weakens the again, the sense that they're doing something unique, different, right? Meanwhile, the effect of Western propaganda is very much present in the Soviet Union, right? And that effect is largely through materialism and consumerism. So the West projects this image of, look at this, where everyone here is rich and we're eating hamburgers and living large. It's fantastic. And it's all because of markets. And if you embrace markets, you too will be rich, right? And a certain class in the Soviet Union, kind of the intelligentsia, but also, some of the workers, right? They find this has some appeal, So they start saying, yes, if only we could do some of these market reforms, right? And this becomes the tendency, right? Beginning in the 70s, continuing, under Brezhnev, but then really reaching its kind of fulfillment under Gorbachev. So, all of these things, like I said, it's a weakening of the revolution. There isn't a single moment where this happens, right? But it's a kind of a process of dissolution. So even while the economy continues to grow, and I think the essentialist narratives that say socialism doesn't work economically, that's not true at all, right? I mean, because we have this like tremendously rapid industrialization, economic growth that is not at all guaranteed. I mean, we look at many capitalist countries fail to deliver anything close to this kind of rapid economic development. So, to say that capitalism delivers this economic growth and socialism does not, I think that's a very bad misreading of the actual history here. So, even with all these problems, I think it would have been very difficult for the Soviet Union to be felled without the help of, well, first Gorbachev and then Boris Yeltsin. There's this moment where they suspend the Constitution. Yeltsin suspends the Constitution. Tens of thousands of people are protesting. And Yeltsin does a violent crackdown. About 3,000 people get killed, right? I mean, what do you call this, right? I mean, when you suspend the Constitution, I mean, we've been told that that's like, oh, the people of the Soviet Union have risen up and demanded change. That's not what that is. That's a coup, I mean, it's a coup by a local elite with support from the United States, right? Is that the moment when things go wrong? I mean, that's more like, I mean, that's the killing blow, right? But that's only the end of a long series of events. So, I don't know. I've talked for a while here. I just want to make sure that I've given you some kind of answer here, right? Socialism has a lot of concrete achievements, and the fact that it was brought down in the Soviet Union, that brings an end to that period of experimentation in that country. But I think the impetus for socialism, the idea that says we can create a better life for the masses of people. First of all, we have very positive results on that from the Soviet experience. Secondly, that experiment is not going to come to an end, right? That experiment, I think, is part of, broadly speaking, right, the experiment of socialism is where humanity is at right now. I'm seeing a lot.
So someone from the UK is in the chat, and they mentioned Dr. Bair. Do you watch Adam Curtis documentaries at all? Have you seen his work? Do you know his work?
Is that the guy who ruins everything? Who is it?
No.
Who's Adam Curtis? I don't know.
Some people he does, but no. Adam
He's a
Curtis,
British
documentarian. He made this documentary, actually a really good documentary called Century of the Self, Bitter Lake, Hypernormalization. He's got a new documentary out where he talked about this figure that no one knows, that I never heard of, named Michael X. That is supposed to be some sort of black radical figure from the UK in the 60s. And someone on the chat just commented that they were from the UK, and he's like, and none of us here have ever heard of Michael. Oh shit, that was funny. You guys are
cracking. Krabs said 7 years back, I walked with Who Moved My Cheese for months. Give a copy to every member of my team.
Oh, because somebody's name is Who Moved My Cheese. Jean Bajlan says no more Adam Curtis. There will be no more Adam Curtis, Jean. But whoever said that shit, but they didn't know who Michael X is. Radical is your name. That shit is fucking hilarious. Hilarious. Yes, the name of my band does come from an Adam Curtis movie, Bitter Lake. That it does. This chat has been on fire, and it's been making me laugh hysterically between the chat and actually these two OGs on the screen with me.
By the way, for anyone who has been a first-time viewer of our podcast, please hit subscribe on YouTube and hit the bell. Also, be generous enough if you would like to donate to our Patreon. Become a patron at the link that Jason will put up.
I always put a link in the description. And I want to thank everybody that has become a patron of late. Really appreciate it. And it's actually making sure the show can keep going. Sometimes you don't see me scrambling around trying to find money to keep this stuff going, but it's people like you that are actually helping us keep doing this. So thank you so much. So us getting to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube means that we can finally have a monetized YouTube channel and have super chats and get ad revenue and all that other good stuff. So we're almost there. And it's because good people like you are sharing the show. You're talking about it with people, and that means a lot, because people like Pascal now are starting to show up on different shows, and we actually were talking about trying to get him a Jacobin article, right?
We'll see how that goes.
You think there might? What if Jacobin had a paper bag test?
Dr. Bair, people are asking if you have any published books or working on a book. Have any books out?
I do. I wrote I wrote a book about prison labor. So, it's called Prison Labor in the United States, Economic Analysis. I'm working on a book that's about China. It's about the situation in Xinjiang with the Uyghur Muslims. That's a relatively new area for me. I've studied economic history of China extensively. I have lectures about this, But that particular region and studying that particular, the very new kinds of things that are happening there, that's a new kind of area of study for me. So I've been writing a lot about that on Twitter. Some people have been, seeing some of my threads about this. So just a little bit about my work. Yeah.
So Dr. Bair, if you're not following him on Twitter, you got to follow Dr. Bair on Twitter, because he's been getting into all kind of Twitter fights with right-wing reactionaries, because I believe you've got communists in your profile. And your profile is I'm not saying I'm the reason why your profile is bigger, but when we first met, I know you had maybe 5,000 followers, and now you got a K.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
I know it's really picked up, and I'm sort of surprised. I mean, I was on Twitter for years, but for years I never really did much with it, And then I kind of got on there, and I'm like, oh, look at this, Bernie Twitter. All right, yeah, that's there's communist Twitter. Okay, all right. I feel like a sleeper that got activated or something like that. That's
well, you're blowing up, and I love it. So is this person radical saying they are a Kala? Because if that's the case, then that's really cool, because I've been trying to get a hold of you. Wait, what? Because do you know the rapper Akala?
No,
I'm familiar with him. I'm very familiar with his work.
We always make this comment that if you think that hip hop is your what is it? You say it, Pascal. I'm fucking
hip hop is your contribution to the Black liberation struggle.
I will say this, brother. I will say this. He wrote a really good book called Natives, Race and Class in Great Britain or the United Kingdom. I forget the whole title, but it's his story of being a mixed race person in the 80s in the UK, and he also has a history of kind of race and class. But it's a great history. He actually does a lot of speaking engagements at Oxford and a bunch of colleges, and we don't have anyone like him here. I think the closest thing we have.
No, we don't have any American rappers who are performing that level of intellectual work product.
I'm trying to think who's the closest. The only thing I think is Chuck D might be the closest.
How about Boots Riley?
Oh, good call.
Boots, okay. No, Boots Riley.
Boots. Look, I know Boots. Boots is hip hop. People forget because he's got a new crop of fans because he's been doing it for so fucking long. People forget that first Coup album is 92, 93. That first Coup album comes out. He's still doing shit. So his sound has kind of matured, and a lot of other people in his that came out around the same time as him that were doing, I wouldn't say similar stuff, because he was always whatever he sounds like now, as far as the content he was saying then, of course. But he would do songs with E40. He would do songs with Tupac. He would do songs with gangster motherfuckers. And then he kind of after 9/11, he got to go on tour with Tom Morello and 9 Inch Nails. So, and I'm not saying anything about him as a person or he's got a live band now. He's still the same Boots Riley from fucking Kill My Landlord album.
When can we get him on the show?
I haven't physically seen him since before the lockdown. I don't even know.
He'd be a great guest for the show.
Oh, I've talked to Boots for hours about hella shit. He's got great fucking stories. He knows pretty much every genre of music. You bring up a genre of music.
Who else I think of if we're talking about hip hop intellectuals? It's somebody who's a little bit more tangential to the community, but it's Saul Williams.
Saul Williams is a righteous poet. I know Saul Williams very well. Definitely a deep content cat. Brilliant guy. Saul Williams is more like a slam poet than a rapper. I think, Jason, you might be familiar with Saul Williams' poem. He did a
one that came out in the 90s. The Trent Reznor did his album, the kind of rocky one. The first big Saul Williams is part of this crew. There's a documentary about him, and maybe you know some of these Negroes, Pascal, because it's your hood. Spike Lee, Saul Williams, Vernon Reed from Living Color.
They were like
Rosie
kind of,
Perez.
they were this kind of the bohemian, the 80s bohemians and black bohemians of New York, kind of like the post civil rights New York Renaissance, i.e., not Harlem Renaissance. Right, as I remember, Wesley Snipes was in that crew. Spike Lee.
Would you put Wesley Snipes in that crew? Because I just watched Wildcats for the first time in 30 years, and I can't put Wesley Snipes in that crew. Wildcats.
I think he was in New York around that time.
He's a New Yorker, but I you don't understand. Watching Wildcats for me was like watching Soul Plane the first time. I forgot how over the top that movie was. They stopped practicing football and went into a full dance routine.
The poem that the poem that I think launched Saul Williams was the one Amethyst Rock, which he performed on The Wire.
He did a thing. Dead Prez is still around. I actually played guitar on a song that Dead Prez was on hella years ago.
Oh yeah, Dead Prez. That's right.
Saul Williams did a record with Trent Reznor in the early 90s when like 9 Inch Nails was like popping, and that's when he really got blown out. Someone said get Paris on here. I know Paris too. These are like legit dudes that are really cool dudes that I actually like really enjoy as people, and that if we had them on this show, it would have to be a Saturday because that shit would go for like 3 or 4 hours. Because that's how Boots is in general. Boots is a talker. If you've seen his interviews, I mean, he definitely could talk about politics. But to hear his like music conversation, movies and music, I can talk to him about movies and music forever.
And Modern Technique was pretty good too.
I don't know him, but that's a New York guy.
And Modern Technique was a Latino rapper. He had a song called Bush Knocked Down the Towers. He was pretty good.
Oh, shout out. Thank you. Liberate. I fucking love that song. On the music tip, I got the masters back, the first round of masters back for the new Bitter Lake record, and I almost sat in my living room and cried because I don't know when I'm ever going to be able to perform it. And then the other black guy in my band had actually texted very sadly because he wants to play again. And, you know, we can't play with the lockdown. So the lockdown is definitely, it's been great for this fucking show, but it's been horrible for my morale. So this chat is like as close as I can get to the mosh pit. So thank you guys. Someone said Adam Curtis used to be a trot. I don't believe that. Prove it. I need receipts. I need a picture of him. What would a Trotskyite do that you would know like that's a Trotskyite?
Well, Dr. Bair, we've had Dr. Bair on for a while here.
Moral Technique is solid. Dr. Bair, we had you on. So can you guys? What day do you do your meditation? Is it Tuesdays?
Tuesday nights at 7. Yeah.
Tuesday nights at 7 because we have to cut these an hour now. And the chat has to remind us to start shutting up after an hour. And we're just going to go straight to Dr. Bair's meditation. Because that one night we actually ended on time. And I actually was like watching the meditation shit. And I was like trying to get my breathing down.
It's hard after you get keyed up, from doing a show or something. You know, energy's real high, right? It's like you need something that mellows you out.
You know what's funny? So the first time Pascal did this, he like hits me right back and he's like, man, this is kind of exciting. You get a little fired up after this. Now, since he's been doing this for a few months, I don't get shit after the show. Once you say that shit is wrapped up, his black ass is gone. But that shit is oh, my mom watched you. My mom watched your meditation. I I wish she would have watched that in the 80s and I could have saved me some ass whoopings.
I'm I'm very honored to count your mom as one of my fans. I wish.
I mean, it's definitely saving Phoenix some ass whoopings. Maybe that's why.
She does not lay her hand on Phoenix.
No, but she definitely lit my ass up a few times.
You might have deserved it.
I remember one time I lost my keys. One time I lied on a progress report and tried to sign her name, but then I erased it. And I thought it was going to be like those, those commercials, those Latter-day Saints commercials, like "Who broke my window?" So my mom could see that I gave her the bad progress report, and she could see that I tried to sign her name. She goes, "Did you try to sign my name?" Lit my ass up so bad. My friends across the street teased me the next day. It's like, "Then we heard your mama beating the shit out of you." Oh, they can't call CPS on you now, Mama. I'm grown. Don't worry, you're fine. Dr. Bair, thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's always a great conversation. I do hope that one of these times we'll get further into our list of questions because they're always great questions. The ones
we're chipping away.
Should I post? I kind of want to like post them. There's a part of me that wants to post them.
I mean, you might get some good responses. Like because people, yeah, might be a good thing to post.
Arabs ain't built America, black people built America.
Before you go,
ain't built America, black people built America. Jews ain't built America, black people built America.
Man,
Mexicans ain't built America, black people built America. Anglo-Saxons ain't built America, I built America. So don't talk to me about no damn minority set-asides. Because I'm not a damn minority.
Sorry. Before you go, I just had to hit you with brother Umar Johnson. Janice
go back and forth between Marxism and clips of Tucker Carlson. So, y'all got to support. This is revolution.
Janice said, post the questions.
Can we post the questions? I want to. Pascal asked the best questions, by the way. The best questions. Generally, if you ever hear someone interviewing someone on the show, it's Pascal asking the questions because they're so fucking good. You know why? Because he's so goddamn smart. But his kryptonite is this.
Come on, man. Please. Come on, man.
All right, I'm stop. All right, Dr. Bair, I'm gonna let you go.
Thanks again for having me, you guys. Just let me know whenever you want me to be on the show. I'd love to come and support. I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm glad to be able to.
Yeah, we had some interesting and very good dialogue here.
Absolutely.
Oh, this was.
By the way, promoting. We got to promote my good friend, media mentor Janice Graham, this Saturday on her show Our Common Ground, which is on Blog Talk Radio. She will have the wonderful political scientist, Professor Willie Leggett, who actually was on the ground in South Carolina around the South Carolina primary, Professor Emeritus from South Carolina State. If you guys don't follow Our Common Ground, you can go to Facebook and watch her work. She posts some of her videos on YouTube, but it's on Blog Talk Radio, Our Common Ground. Check out Janice Peak Graham. She has over 35 years experience in radio, supporting the Black community. She's a pillar of the community. Please check her work out on the Our Common Ground Facebook page.
Pascal, my mom wants to know if you know Dr. Umar Johnson.
I do not know Dr. Umar Johnson personally. I'm familiar with his work.
Mama, what happens is like Scooby-Doo, and Pascal And then you see Dr. Umar. And then all you hear is white supremacy. So, okay, I'm going to stop. Just not right now. All right. Thank you, Dr. Bair.
Take care, you guys.
Have a good night. Because we had Umar Johnson on, we got more people viewing the show now. Just because of Umar Johnson. Someone says they cannot deal with Umar Johnson. Who can deal with Umar? The Umar Johnson is the antithesis of Wait a minute. I'm gonna just, can you guys do me this one favor? When you watch this clip of Tucker Carlson,
come on, man.
Like he's coming all over himself. Look at
My ancestors were important. My ancestors were imported. My ancestors were not immigrants. My ancestors were imports. Remember, you didn't even consider them people. Remember, I am not an immigrant. I am an import. And as an import, there is no other group you can lump me in with. And black people, this is why we got to be unapologetically African. Arabs ain't built America. Black people built America. Chinese ain't built America.
You know, I think the railroads would have something to say about that. like just fuck the railroads. Fuck the railroads. I don't take no trains. Trains is for white people. Arabs didn't build America. I built America. All right, that's the way you feel about it.
I don't want to talk about this.
But did you see Tucker Carlson's face? When he said I was imported, Tucker Carlson was like he felt bad for a second. So are you telling me the only black people that can make Tucker Carlson feel bad are like Cornel West and Umar Johnson?
I'm not that interested in what makes Tucker Carlson feel bad or mentally.
Oh God, I can't. I don't know why that shit made me laugh so hard. Like that to me right now, the funniest shit on the internet is Umar Johnson yelling at Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson sitting there taking it like, oh, fucking cuck. Is that what Michael Brooks used to call him, a cuck? Tucker Carlson was sitting there getting cucked up. Oh God. So Saturday, we're gonna have Gene Bajan said, what's Umar's deal?
I don't want to answer this question. I don't want to go there. Can we move on?
What? Wait, who would you say is like the godfather of the Hotep shit?
Yo, man. Someone said I never laugh. I laugh all the time.
He laughs all the time. He laughs.
I'm just
all
not
the
laughing
time.
now.
He's a very light and funny man before the filming starts, because we have to talk every day beforehand. So we talk every day. It's like, hey, motherfucker, and then we have to get serious for the show. I was watching something today, and it was like I felt like it was a precursor to that Hotep shit. Was it Henry? What is that guy's name? Real smart black guy. He's old. Not Henry Louis Gates.
John Henry Clark?
Yeah, John Henry Louis Gates. Yeah, John Henry Clark. Someone says Malachi York is the godfather of the
Malachi York's passed away. He was in jail.
I mean, is that where it comes from? He's the master of Hotep. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
No. Wow, your mom says she's gonna bake me some brownies. That's what's up. What are you gonna put in the What are you gonna put in the brownies, though?
Don't trust her. I don't eat that cooking. He's Erykah Badu's master teacher. Is that a good thing?
My position is that there are various intellectual traditions that exist in communities, as well as the Black community. Umar Johnson comes from a particular strain of thought that exists in the Black community. He has the rights to his opinions and thoughts and worldview. Many of them I do not share, but I'm just not particularly interested in him being used as a foil by Tucker Carlson at all.
I didn't even know.
I generally believe anytime Tucker Carlson has people on his show, particularly Black people, he's not doing so because he wants to present a legitimately positive argument or vision of what is good for large segments of the Black community. I think Tucker Carlson uses his Black guests as a certain kind of punching bag for his own politics. Some would say that he does the same thing with people like Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore and I'm not a fan of people who claim to have progressive or radical politics going on Tucker Carlson's show as if that's somehow expanding the audience. I think that once you give credence to those reactionaries, you give them validity that they don't deserve.
Yeah, and how many Black people are really watching Tucker Carlson? Like, I've never been in the barbershop and like the other night on Tucker. Like, I've never heard that. But then again, I haven't been in a barbershop in some time. I've been bald for a while.
I mean, I do think that there are times in spaces that you should engage people with antithetical opinions, right? I think that if you're in a situation that you have to engage, right-wing people, right-wing Black people, I think that you should do that, right? But I think you have to be very, very selective on the forums to do that. Which Gene Blazon says Tucker Carlson uses Black people to own the libs. Well, I don't defend the libs because I think the libs have a lot of reasons to be owned, but he does use them for that. But you become a tool for him and not an advocate for your particular narrative. And
Andrew Gray talks about she's always open to go on Fox News. I mean, there's people that want to go on Fox News.
She said that?
I can see that. I mean, she also took a lot of shit, working for Bernie. I mean, Black people just...
Someone asked about Kashama Shawant. We have heard about Kashama Shawant, and we're trying to get her on the show.
We are trying to get Kashama Swan on the show. We have a message out to her people. We'll see if her people get back to us. There's a few people that I actually sent messages out to that I didn't think I was going to get on. And I call that the, well, fuck it messages. I actually did send Janine Garofalo a message to come on the show. We'll see if she actually comes on. I've definitely hit up Brianna Joy Gray, who's actually pretty hard to hit up. And we'll see if she gets back. No, Mickey Kantz is good on Fox. I mean, some people are good on Fox because they know what it is and they're there for a reason. And it's usually to shit on the Democratic Party. Fox wants that soundbite to shit on the Democratic Party, which, I wouldn't want to go on Fox News to do that. And I because I can shit on them here just fine. They're going to misconstrue my taking a dump on them. Who does Pascal want to come on?
Who do I want to come on the show?
My mom says get Kamala on the show. Oh, why would you say that?
If we could have an open, real, serious question and answer with her, I would put Kamala. I would get Kamala. I would love to have Kamala Harris on the show. Are we going to be, we can't be limited in the questions.
Do you think Kamala Harris, as vice president, would give you any honest answer? I'm sure you got her in a closed room and everybody's phone was taken away like a Dave Chappelle concert. You might hear some real shit from Kamala Harris. But you ain't gonna hear real shit from Kamala Harris. You know, a little less.
No, she won't. I mean, believe me, if I'm asking the questions, she's not going to answer the questions because I'm going to ask her real questions about her and empire and the Biden administration and all kinds of stuff. But listen to what Janice Graham says. I don't invite anyone to which I cannot greet. I respect you. Oh, that's a subtle shot.
That's fair. Make Kamala talk about Tupac. Speaking of Tupac, Adam Curtis, you wrong for the way you portrayed Tupac in that documentary. He lied. He said Tupac raped a 17-year-old girl, and that's not true. First of all, the woman was 19, and he was out of the hotel when the assault happened.
Oh, you know who would be a better guest? Kamala Harris's Marxist father. That would be a great guest.
I said something about that to Teray because I asked if he knew him or if his dad had known him, and I think he had met him. It was either Teray or Cedric. I think hadn't actually met him or did an interview with him. I would love to talk to him. Not even about just in general. That would be a good guess. So if you guys know any of these people, let us know. Yeah, the father and daughter don't talk apparently. When are Teray and Cedric coming back? Is in the work. Cedric's finishing up a book right now. I talked to Teray the other day about coming on with his pop. We actually have Preston Smith coming on Thursday.
Preston Smith is coming on this next Thursday, right? Next week.
Yeah, Thursday. Again, Saturday is Jen Pan from Jacobin. We're going to talk the professional managerial class.
It's going to be a good show.
It's going to be a good show. Also, we have our third co-host, which is Marcus from the Left Flank Vets. Milton Alamati is really interesting.
That's a deep brother.
He says, man, I need a Reed family show. So this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I wanted.
We're trying to do a Reed show with the Reed the son and Reed the father?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about, since now the patron community is growing, my original thing was, because this all started from a band, was to do, play private shows for people, but that's not happening. And there was a thing that I did on Ben Burgess' show where he had for his patrons, we all watched Judas and the Black Messiah. And then we actually did a show after that. that was public. But we watched the movie with all the patrons. Would you be down, Pascal, to like watch a movie if we could figure out how to do it? We did it through Discord with our patron community.
Depends on the movie.
I was thinking about that new Billie Holiday movie.
The one by what's his name?
Yeah, Lee
Daniels. Come on, man.
I know he's a poverty porn guy, but I mean, Gene Brown says, make Doug Lane watch a Tyler Perry movie. That sounds like a fucking plan.
Ralph Nader would be a great guest. I wouldn't mind having Ralph.
I would love to talk to Ralph Nader. I will up my patron for that. Also, I was going to ask
you know who I would like to have as a guest? Back to our theme of wanting to have more black women, I'd like to get Elaine Brown, original member of the Black Panther Party.
Did I show you that clip of Elaine Brown?
Can we get Elaine Brown as a guest? Can we get Elaine Brown as a guest?
Does anybody know? Who do we know that knows people like that? Paul J.
We should reach out to Elaine Brown. I think I was connected to her on Facebook at one point. I would love to get Elaine Brown.
She is a fiery motherfucker, man. She does not play. Oh, she doesn't play.
I would
Paul
love
J.
to get Elaine.
We might be getting Paul J. Maybe not this month. I definitely had Michael Wilpert on before I was doing live streams when it was just an audio podcast. I talked with Michael Wilpert about his book about changing Venezuela, about the Bolivarian Revolution.
You know who makes a very good guest? And I actually have a connection to him. We might be able to get Dhoruba bin Wahad, member of the Black Panther
a long time ago. Yeah,
founder of the Black Liberation Army. Mm-hmm. He talk about a firecracker.
So my mom says Pam Grier follows her on Twitter. I just watched another documentary about Black Hollywood. Napoleon the Legend. The only problem we have right now with Napoleon is just a time zone problem. Him and I talk at least once or twice a week. He was on the show before. He is a friend in real life. He's a really good dude. I would love to have him on. I definitely want to talk to him about the music industry now.
What about Angela Davis? She's in your hood.
Well, I had to do that favor for a homie to get her connected with Colin Kaepernick, and that was my favor back. And I think I told you about this, right, Pascal? Where I was like, look, I'm connected with Kaepernick, and so I was like, so if I want Angela Davis, because this person got their doctorate under Davis, you got to hook that up. And she goes, well, I can give you her assistant's number. I was like, come on, bruh. I got to get more than the number. We got to get the intro call, because Angela Davis is not an easy person to talk to. Someone said Angela Davis met.
Angela Davis today, meh. But we could talk about the contradictions, man. No, I don't want Ta-Nehisi. I'm not interested in interviewing Ta-Nehisi Coates at all. No.
Oh, that whoever wrote that did not watch the Black Superman episode or the Black Superman clip that I put up. I miss David Graeber too. Bullshit Jobs is a great book. So is Debt. Shout out to the late great David Graeber. Van Jones, Mom, you were really trying to get me shot in these streets.
Janice Graham said, okay, thanks for a great show. Production meeting doesn't pay overtime. She's like,
So okay, before I go, what movie can we watch? Because I talked to the guy that hooked up the Discord thing, so we could all watch a movie and it'd be patrons only. Someone said the new Coming to America. That actually seems fun.
I mean, is it going to be a good movie?
I don't know. I ain't seen Coming to America.
It's coming on tomorrow, right?
Oh, it is tomorrow. Yeah. I mean, we could do the thing like next week.
Janice Graham, you're leaving us? Good night.
Okay. It's late everywhere. Yeah, I don't know.
You can't stop talking, man.
It's because I had too much caffeine. I'm actually drinking coffee. This is not water. I'm drinking coffee.
You always drink coffee when we stream.
I am always drinking coffee. I'm gonna get you Sucker, Fear of a Black Hat. I would love to watch either one of those movies with people on Patreon and have you guys comment afterwards. That shit would be fucking hilarious.
I thought something with some radical political relevance, like Lumumba, man.
That's a new movie, right?
It's an old movie. Raoul Peck's Lumumba, The Young Karl Marx, I Am Not Your Negro. Janice said, y'all dragging my brain. No production conversation. Maybe we should have Janice Graham as a guest. She'd be interesting. Janice Graham.
Why do we never have Janice Graham? Okay.
Years.
Why do we never have Janice Graham on the show?
Because Janice is an interlocutor. She said, what am I going to talk about? I said, Janice, you interviewed everybody in the Black community over 35 years. You'd be a great guest. Janice has interviewed everybody.
She has interviewed everybody. Everybody. Who Janice Graham knows Elaine Brown.
She probably does.
Janice Brown.
You know who someone asked who we would like, and I'm going to ask Janice Graham if she can get her for us. Nina Turner.
Ooh, cool. You are going there with Nina Turner, aren't you?
I would like to interview Nina Turner.
Ooh.
Let's see if we can get Nina Turner.
All right. So you look, everybody knows my Twitter is wide open. Movie suggestions. I'm really liking the suggestion of making Doug Lane watch a Tyler Perry movie. That sounds like fun. But fun for me, like fun watching Pascal watch Umar Johnson. And that's kind of evil fun. And Doug might get mad, and then we can't get our show up anymore.
Let's work on the other.
I have a clip that we're gonna go out. No Van Jones. You can bet on that. Skyline Chili.
James will be a good guess.
Skyline Chili is literally some of the worst shit I've ever eaten in my life, and it tastes like dog vomit. There you go. Take that, Cincinnati.
Janice Graham, she can get Nina for us. Uh-oh.
So before you guys go, I want you to hear this. My mom says Barack is free. Barack Obama definitely, if he came on here after we fucking went in on him and Ta-Nehisi Coates with that black Superman shit, then I would have to give him some respect. But it's back to that Janice Graham comment about having people on and we have to say, I respect you. And I don't know if I could. Rachel Dolan, you guys are being dicks now.
Man, play the clip, man.
Also, there was, I don't know whether we participated in it, but there was something about the showers. We brought in these mobile bathrooms or showers or something. And I think we also, no one ever says this, but I'm pretty sure we had some security people there because we were pretty rough and we didn't play. And so I think we had some security. I mean, people have the idea that there was just this guy, Brad, and we provided some, food. And I must say that the food we provided was really good food and was hot food. And it was beautifully cooked. I mean, it wasn't, junk food. It wasn't snacks and, whatever. It was really good food and everybody was happy. And I presume we had plates there because I remember people always going over there during the day and the evening because we fed more than one meal. It wasn't just... No, we probably cooked it at the school. We had a big school on 65th and East 14th Street in Oakland, and we had a huge kitchen there, and we knew the kitchen was perfect because the health department ran through there every 5 minutes trying to find one thing wrong with our school. We fed our children 3 meals a day, so it probably wasn't going to be hard for us to just add some more food to that, the meals that we were feeding kids. We had kids from as young as 2 to, in the school up to about, 12. And then after school, we had teen programs, and a lot of people came for dinner. So we always, at that school, were making breakfast, lunch, and dinner anyway. And so there's probably an easy way to we had a big kitchen there, really big.
And who actually did the cooking?
I mean, I ran the Black Panther Party at that time. I mean, everybody had their jobs and their assignments. There was a woman probably named Carol Granison. She was probably the nutritionist that always... because our kids ate very well. Back in the day, we're talking about 1970 something. And so we had our kids would think of yogurt as dessert, which you cannot imagine in the black community how really advanced or whatever we could say if it is advanced. Or they would think of, a stick of celery with peanut butter on it as a real treat. So, and then we had our own garden there. We grew some vegetables, broccoli and something, lettuce, what have you. So, I mean, the kids grew it, and we ate that food. So we had very, very, very great focus. Remember, the Black Panther Party, as I say, we gave away food. We did breakfast programs. We understood that food was a fundamental right and a fundamental necessity, obviously. So it wasn't difficult. We had cooks. So, I mean, whoever was cooking in the kitchen cooked the food. Yeah. It was not myself, because I can't cook even as we speak.
You'll be amused to know one of the people we interviewed said, Elaine Brown cooked all the food.
Who was that?
I don't remember. It was somebody that just sort of said, oh, she probably did it. It was somebody in the...
No, we had a massive operation. We had a school. People, that must not have been anybody in the Black Panther Party because, first of all, anybody that knows me knows one thing about me. I cannot cook at all. And I mean, I'm talking about serious flaws in cooking. Like, I'm going to cut my thumb if I cut an onion or something, seriously.
But would it have been women mostly?
No. Why would you say that? Why would you say that? That's what women say. They always think the Black Panther Party was some kind of chauvinist entity. They fail to remember that NAACP, SNCC, there was no progressive organization. There was no black organization that had any women in leadership except the Black Panther Party. Yeah. Now, why is it that people would think women would cook? As a matter of fact, the chief cook was a guy named Russell, whatever his last name was, I can't think of.
Oh, great, yeah.
And the chief cook at our lamppost was a guy named Mojo. Right. I mean, so why would we think that? It's insulting to me because people think the black people, that we had some kind of animalistic thug boys and that all the women were bitches in the kitchen. No, it was not like that. And but it calls that stereotype. Yeah. So I'm checking it now so that you have a consciousness that I hear that. I hear people criticize the Black Panther Party all the time. Oh, it wasn't a party. It was, it was chauvinist. Oh, excuse me. Is the world not, a country that's not a patriarchy? Tell me which one it is. Do you know one?
Yeah, I just wanted you to clarify that for us.
I know, but that question wouldn't have come up if you hadn't thought that only women would be cooking.
I didn't think that, but other people have said that, so I just really, you're the only source of...
Who has said what?
Well, it's just like the general conversations sometimes that you...
Who are these people that say these things?
Just in my research and talking to people, it's not that anybody thinks that necessarily, but those are the questions I've been asked. And
But this is a question of women. This is a question that women ask, and mostly so-called feminists of the Gloria Steinem ilk, or whatever they now want to call themselves, the third wave, second wave, whatever wave they are. And this is a very bourgeois feminist notion, because they always think that we have to get out of the kitchen. And you know what black women said? You know what my mother said when they had to get out of the kitchen and into the street? Yeah, I'd like to get out of the kitchen, your kitchen. Yeah. And it didn't even occur to these Betty Friedens and whatever her name is, former CIA agent Bunny, Gloria Steinem. I mean, she admits that she worked for the CIA, so it's not something Elaine is making up, okay? She talks about it, and she was also a Playboy Bunny. And Gloria Steinem and the Betty Friedan, that group, those are the kinds of people that constantly said, oh, the Black Panthers were chauvinists, so I didn't want to be in it. So I go, okay, fine, well, what group are you in? Because you denounced the woman that became Roe, and she said she didn't accept third trimester abortion.
So,
You know, and I'm finished proselytizing on this. I just want to make clear that who cooked the food, like what? What difference does it make? We've thought of ourselves as an organization. If you had a job to do, you had an assignment. We were a paramilitary organization in the sense that people did not vote on what you did or what you didn't do. If you could cook, you would be cooking. If you could handle a gun, you would be handling a gun. Most women could not handle guns like men could, although all of us were trained on weapons, okay? So if you want to ask me about the internal workings of the Black Panther Party, then we can ask that. But when you start then that's a separate conversation. Yeah. But we're talking about the position that we were the only black organization that took that. Where were the Weather Underground when we occupied the building? Do you know? Mm-hmm. SDS. Mm-hmm. The little People's Park people. Where were they? Where was the SCLC, NAACP, the Freedom, whatever it is, Africa, New Republic of Africa. Where were all those groups? So here you have an organization that had such an understanding of revolution in America that it actually participated and understood the connection and didn't care about the majority of people there were white. So where was the Native American? Where was AIM? Where was the Puerto Ricans? I don't know. We were there. Now you're going to question me about who cooked the food. What difference does it make to you who cooked the food? That's my point.
Right, yeah. No, that's great. You've really clarified that.
I'm sorry to be, but I have to tell you, because we have to know this stuff. What difference does it really make who cooked the food? Yeah. The Black Panther Party delivered it every day. And if I remember, it was like 2 runs. I didn't do that. I was the chairman of the Black Panther Party. I was running everything. In 77, I was running Lionel Wilson's campaign. We had a big garbage problem that we had. We were trying to develop garbage. We had all kinds of other issues that we were working on. This was one of the issues that we were involved in, one of them. And we put our people where they were assigned to be, and they knew to do it. Nobody said, oh, let's see, I shouldn't cook because I'm a woman. What do you think? No, it didn't go down like that. If I said, and if the people under me said, and everybody that was under me, and the only one who wasn't under me was Huey P. Newton. He was in Cuba. So what went on the day-to-day operations of the Black Panther Party, we had a central committee. And so who did the newspaper, who sold the papers on that corner, I didn't deal with that. I don't know who sold those newspapers, per se, because they had people over them. And then I was over those people. It went like that. Okay, I'm finished. But now you have a perspective, because the Black Panther Party was a paramilitary organization. And unlike that's why we got stuff done. We didn't have people sitting around having dialogue about what do you feel and how do you feel. We didn't care how you felt. You either make a commitment to this or not. We'll listen to what you think is a good strategy, but it's not based on how you feel. It's based on what is going to be a correct strategy to create revolutionary change in America. Now, did we fail? Obviously, we did, because the party is over. But our tenets and our strategies, I think, are valid. I mean, the FBI came down on us. They didn't come down on Ed Roberts. They came down on the Black Panther Party. And this was one of the reasons, because we connected all these people up to a revolutionary ideology.
Not a game for Elaine Brown. All right, thank you guys. And I am, I'm sorry. I guess our boy is back. So you want to say goodnight to the people?
That was an amazing little Elaine. We got to get Elaine Brown on the show. We got to get Nina Turner on the show. More Black women, please. I suggest also
I only
you guys
found that
did
clip. Someone's asking where I got the clip from. I don't know where the whole interview is. I only found the clip. There's a person on YouTube named Afro-Marxism. Afro-Marxism or Afro-Marxist has a lot of good content. So does shit. I forget. Oh, the left flank vets are here. Shout out to the Twitch community. She is amazing.
By the way,
and
if you guys didn't catch our interview Tuesday with Dr. Asia Leeds of Spelman College, please check it out. That was a wonderful episode and a great interview.
Yeah, please check out the conversation with Asia Leeds, because it definitely took a turn that we didn't think it was going to take. Afro-Marxist is a really good page, and a lot of the stuff I get from either Afro-Marxist or another one called like Real Black, and real is spelled REEL, as in a film reel, because there's actually some really good content on there. Someone says they hated the interview that we did with Leeds. I'm sorry, they all can't be winners, I guess. Michelle Alexander. I would like to talk to Michelle Alexander. One thing actually Dylan Rodriguez said that we should do is rewatch the 13th documentary and kind of point out some of the flaws of that movie. I can dig that.
We got to go, man. We're way over time.
We are hell of overtime. And once again, I can't send this to Doug Lane. So it's all your faults. I'm going to blame
whose fault is that? Oh, it's not mine.
So maybe that'll be the thing we do for patrons. I'll get Dylan and I'll try to get some more abolitionists on there to really break down. I wouldn't say lies about the film, because I don't think they're lies per se, but I think people kind of attached themselves to certain parts of that movie, like the 13th Amendment and private prisons and low-level drug offenders, and those things exist, but it's actually violent criminals. We'll watch it. We'll rewatch it, and email me your ideas for the patron movie that you guys want, and we'll do it in the middle of the month. We'll do a movie with patrons middle of the month. Anyone who's as a patron, we'll all get in. It was pretty cool the way it is, and we can see each other and we can chat on the side and watch the movie and shit talk and all that good shit. So I look forward to doing stuff like that. Pascal, look at him. He doesn't. This guy's his face. Here, take up the whole screen. Mad face.
I'm good, man.
All right, man. So, wow, all these people are here now because Left Flank Vets just rated the chat. Shout out to the Left Flank Vets. I know they rated it because there's all these people here now as we're leaving. Pascal, now you got to talk for like another half hour.
On that note, patrons are people who contribute to our Patreon.
The community is growing, so we want to start offering some patron-only things that we start to do. I think if we interviewed Robin D.G. Kelly, Pascal's head would explode, much like it would in a Umar Johnson conversation.
Why are you putting it, man? You putting all kinds of mojo on me here, man. Please stop.
I would just tell Robin D.G. Kelly that his introduction to Black Marxism was maybe 45 pages too long. Jesus Christ. Did you see how long that thing was?
I haven't read that book in a while, man.
We should read it again.
Not really.
Okay. I'm going to stop. Please, if you guys haven't done it, hit like, hit subscribe. We are almost at the point where we can monetize the YouTube channel. We're almost there. So, you know, we should do something. What should we do if we get to 1,000? We have to think of something to do. Quick. What are we going to do?
We'll think about that when we get there.
You black man. You got to give people hope so they share the shit.
We'll find a special guest, man. Maybe we'll have a musical guest.
Oh yeah. Do you guys like hip hop? I'd probably get Napoleon to do something. That's what I'll do. I will ask first if he can do something. People keep saying make Doug Lane watch a Tyler Perry movie.
That might be culture shock for him.
All those black people on screen at one time for Doug. I think his eyes will just explode.
I don't sing, Gene.
Oh God. People keep asking us to have Brianna Joy Gray on. Brianna Joy Gray is like not easy to get a hold of, mainly because people.
I would love to get Brianna Joy Gray on. I think that would be wonderful. But Nina Turner, listen, we're going to talk to Janice Graham. We have an in to congressional candidate Nina Turner from the great state of Ohio. I think that will be a spicy conversation.
That would be a very spicy conversation. She'll just go on about force to vote. I would have Brianna Joy Gray on and not talk about force to vote, Jimmy Dore, or anything about voting and doors.
I say Nina Turner, man. Nina Turner was a bit.
I would love to have Nina Turner on the show. I'd be super fired up to have Nina Turner on the show. Would love. Actually, next Tuesday, Matt Leck from the Majority Report is coming on. Did I tell you that?
No, you didn't tell me that.
He's jumping over, having a sports conversation. The neoliberalization of sports. So we're going to have Nate from Red Spin Sports, which is a leftist sports show. And Matt Leck from the Majority Report and Left Reckoning and Literary Hangover. Excuse me, is going to come on next Tuesday. We have Jen Pan Saturday, along with Marcus from the Left Flank Vets will be here Saturday. And usually those shows go pretty long. So I don't know if Jen is going to stay with us the whole time. I doubt she will, but get your popcorn ready for the Saturday show. It's always I have some shit ready to throw at Pascal and Marcus, some black shit. Someone says Killer Mike would be dope.
That'd be interesting.
You know why Killer Mike is interesting? Because you can tell him you don't agree with him and he won't get mad if you say it in a way that makes sense. I literally told him to his face that I don't agree with everything he says, and he just kind of like, yeah. Stacey Abrams, I don't really want to talk to her. You want to talk to Stacey?
On that note,
damn. See, Mama, you made Stacey Abrams make everybody leave. We had 1,000 messages in the chat today. That was the first time. You know what? Maybe I'm here, Pascal. You can go because I'm gonna talk for a minute. Get some rest because I'm gonna call you in the morning. I'm not gonna talk about your mama or anything. I'm just gonna. I just want to say that maybe it would be mildly hilarious if, for patrons, we did have like Doug Lane watch shit that he would never watch, like New Jack City. Like, just make Doug Lane watch the first part of House Party. Oh shit, that would be the funniest shit ever. Oh, Glenn Ford, but Glenn Ford's not well right now, right? Is he still not feeling well?
Glenn Ford has got some health challenges.
We still want to get a Jamu.
We can work on that.
I'm trying to bring back Angela Walker from the Green Party. She was a Green Party VP candidate. I'm trying to bring her back. It's just like she does a Green Party live stream around the same time we do ours. So I just got to make sure the times and everything match. And she's a family person that has a family that she likes to spend time with. So she takes her family time seriously, and I respect that.
We can't let you have coffee when we do the show anymore, Jason.
I can't. I get a headache when I don't. I didn't drink coffee Tuesday, and I had a horrible headache. Can you imagine?
Margaret Kimberly
on. There's clips. There's clips of Margaret on right now. There's clips up right now of Margaret on the show. His wife is getting. I'm another reason why I'm talking to you guys. I'm so terrified to go into the living room because I'm gonna get yelled at for going too long. Because
there's a remedy for that.
I can't. You know how you get in trouble and you just got to take a 12 o'clock ass whooping? Like your curfew's 11 and you're like, well, fuck it. I'm staying out till 12 and I'm just get that 12 o'clock ass whooping. It's 12 o'clock ass whooping time now. Maybe patrons could see me get yelled at. Patrons can see me get the cold fucking shoulder. Killer Mike is a black capitalist. That he is. A self-proclaimed black capitalist.
See what your mama said? Hang up.
I can't be rude. You told me not to be rude, mama. You trained me better than that. So thank you guys. If you haven't done it, please become a patron. For the patrons that are already patrons, I am working on getting some amazing patron-only stuff. I've been talking about doing this movie thing for a while now with actually some people that aren't here. God damn it. Look what Marcus said. Look what Marcus said. This is Marcus right here.
I know that look from past year.
Hey, Marcus, Gin Pan Saturday. Don't be late. Who's Brandon Sutton? That name sounds familiar. Who's Brandon Sutton? Oh, Brandon Sutton used to be on the Michael Brooks show all the time. Yeah. I did talk to the Hood Communists about coming on the show. We're just trying to find something to talk about. So we got some good stuff in the works, man. We got some good stuff in the works. Thank you, Marcus, for raiding the chat. You and the Left Flank Vets. Shout out to all y'all. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I can't wait till Corona's over so I can give you guys all a hug in your relative states. Pascal, let's hang up. We've been going for 2.5 hours. And before we go, I'm going to do the thing that I always do. Well, no. I was going to play a clip on the way out, but I'm scared to do that because last time I played a clip, we actually lost the whole show. So the show with Is that the Margaret Kimberly show that's gone?
No.
That's Jean Bajlan, Kuba, and Marcus. So the last Saturday show is off of YouTube. The only way you can see it is, I think you can find it here on Twitter, and it's like buried in our tweets. But definitely, if you're a patron, it's for patrons only now because I couldn't put it up anywhere else because of copyright over that patent opening. Fox pulled it. Bitches.